Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sonia, and if you're new here, thank you very much for stopping by. You know, traditionally the first course of a three-course afternoon tea is the savories, as in the finger sandwiches. And I thought today we would make a couple of those that I have found to be the most common ones you will find on any traditional afternoon tea menu. Of course, what you decide to put on your tea menu is up to you, but cucumber sandwiches and egg salad sandwiches are probably the two most popular that I have found on, I think, every afternoon tea menu I've ever had in England. And since they're the ones who started this lovely fare almost 200 years ago, I'll let them be the experts. Another thing about these two sandwiches is they are very tasty and they're very easy. So if you want to add or subtract something to make it yours, to put your special spin on it, you absolutely can. Feel free. So let's get started. Now, what I have here are two large hard-boiled eggs that I have peeled and roughly chopped. Not too big a chunks, but not too small either. And to that, I am going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of celery seed. I like celery seed because it's not peppery, but it has kind of that earthy note to it. It's a member of the parsley family, and it just adds a little something extra that really brings out some really good flavors. I'm going to mix that in just a little bit. And then I'm going to take a generous amount of mayo, or in my case, Miracle Whip. I like Miracle Whip salad dressing. I like it because it has a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of tang to it. But if you don't like it, or if you can't find it, mayonnaise works perfectly well in this recipe. And I think that is kind of perfect in its consistency. Don't want it too soupy, but I want it enough to where it's going to have a nice spread to it. All right. And along with that, I'm going to put in just a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper to taste. And that's it. That is how simple this recipe is. Okay. Now for an egg salad sandwich, I like a brown bread, a wheat, rye, pumpernickel. I've actually selected a rye and pumpernickel swirl, and it has a really nice flavor to it, which brings out the good flavor of the egg. The egg is kind of mild. The pumpernickel rye is a little bit more distinctive, and I like that combination. A proper tea sandwich should have the crusts cut off, and you can do it before or after you've filled it, but I like to pre-cut it so I don't waste the filling. Now then, before we fill it, you always want to butter your bread. Butter acts as a moisture barrier for your filling so that you don't have a soggy sandwich. But it also gives something the filling can adhere to. If you've ever picked up a tea sandwich or any sandwich that didn't have some kind of butter or something on the bread itself before the filling was put in, you may find that the bread kind of pulls away from the filling, and that's because it has nothing to adhere to. And this is the way you'll find them done in England too. They seem to, and my viewers who are English, you let me know this, but I believe butter on any sandwich is a pretty normal thing. All right. Now let's fill our sandwich. Now, speaking of the filling, I feel that the secret to a good tea sandwich is the ratio of that filling to the bread. Too much, and every single bite you end up squishing it out on the sides and kind of making a mess. Too little, and then your sandwich ends up a little on the dry side. All right, now we're going to top those. Press it down just a little bit. Now, When it comes to slicing the sandwich, I prefer a really good, sharp, serrated knife. Makes it a little easier. You don't want to put any pressure on the bread as you cut. I mean, you want to hold it in place, but saw back and forth and literally let the weight of the knife do the work for you. And then you won't have it going everywhere. And if you need to, wipe off your knife. So that you're not transferring some of that filling. There you go. And there you have it. Some lovely little egg salad tea sandwiches. Okay, so next up is our cucumber sandwich, probably the quintessential English afternoon tea sandwich. So what I have here is an English cucumber that I have sliced long ways. Now what I did with this, let me show you what I used. I used what's called a mandolin. If you've never used one of these before, they're really convenient, they're really handy, but they're also, they can be quite dangerous because this little blade here is very, very sharp. So if you use one, just be very careful and very aware where your fingers are whenever you're using it. Now, what I have used here is called an English cucumber. These cucumbers are the ones that you will see in the supermarket that are shrink wrapped. They're very long, they're kind of thin. The reason they're shrink wrapped is because this skin here is very, very thin and can actually be damaged easily. So they shrink wrap it to protect it. And what I did is instead of slicing it in the little circles, I sliced it lengthwise so that it will literally fit on the bread a little bit better. Also, what I did with that is after slicing it, I put it on paper towel and then I salted it down and put it in the refrigerator for a couple of hours. A cucumber is very wet and it will release a lot of moisture. And if you do that without kind of trying to get the moisture out before you put it on your sandwich, you can end up with quite a soggy sandwich. So by putting the salt on it first, putting a paper towel down, it has released, I mean, this paper towel that it's on is just wet, and it has released a lot of moisture, so you won't have that in your sandwich instead. I also have 2 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter, and to that I'm going to add chopped fresh dill. Now, if you can't find fresh dill in your grocery store, that's absolutely fine. You can use dried dill. There's not a problem with that at all. I would use a 1/4 teaspoon of the dry dill, and I would probably put it in my butter overnight, or at least a couple of hours before I used it, so that it gets a chance to release those flavors from the dried herb, or herb, depending on where you're from. So that's mixed in very nicely. All right. Also, along with butter, I am going to use this whipped cream cheese. If you like the cream cheese in the block instead, you could let it get to room temperature and then whip it. The whipping just makes it easier to spread, literally. And also with that, I am going to put on a few fresh mint leaves. Now again, if you don't want fresh mint, you don't have to use it. And if you can't find it, you want it and you can't find it, then you can use a 1/4 teaspoon of dried mint again, and you could mix it into your whipped cream cheese overnight or a couple of hours ahead of time, again, to release the flavor a little bit better from your dried herb. And then I'm going to put on a little pepper to taste. Now, since I salted the cucumbers, I'm not going to add any more salt to that. Just going to put on a little of the pepper. So, but first things first, going to remove our crusts from the bread. And I'm using white bread. Cucumber sandwiches seem to just work a little bit better with on white bread. And that's traditionally the way you will find it done. If you want to use some other bread instead, absolutely, go for it. It's your afternoon tea party. You can do it any way you want. But there are traditional ways of doing things, and if you're going for that English tradition, this is how it's done. Alrighty. So let's assemble. Oops, sorry. On one side, I'm going to put the butter. Wonderful thing about cucumber sandwiches, they're so light, they're so fresh tasting, and the dill just contributes to that, just makes it that much better. Okay. Now I'm going to go in with the, if you get a little dill on the cream cheese, that's okay too. You know, you can make tea sandwiches hours ahead, even the night before. But if you do that, you want to make sure and put a little wax paper over the sandwich, and then a damp paper towel, and then put it in an airtight container. If you don't have an airtight container, you can just put a little saran wrap or plastic wrap of some kind over it. I'm working with a little geometric action here, aren't I? Make your design your own, just however it works. You don't want to stack it too high. But something that will give you some nice crunch. Now I'm going to put on my mint leaves. I believe I read somewhere that this is how the late Queen Elizabeth liked her cucumber sandwiches. She liked a little mint. All right, I think we're ready to assemble. Tap those down. All right. And let the knife do the work for you, the weight of the knife. Ah, and that's lovely. Look at that. Perfect. Now, join me for tea. And there you have it, 2 of the most popular and traditional sandwiches for the first course of your afternoon tea. I hope you'll give them a try. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider hitting that like button and consider subscribing for more tea videos. Until next time, bye-bye.